Well, after my last video about Dark They Were and Golden Eyed, I thought, let's just do Forbidden Planet. That's the next obvious one. Of course, Dark They Were started all the way back in the late 60s. Well, this time, Forbidden Planet started in 78. There were a few other shops, but I have to say, most of the time, I always went to the central part of London, obviously along Oxford Street. I would go to, obviously, Virgin Megastore, Selfridges, all those sort of places, Marks and Spencer's. But first port of call was always Forbidden Planet. And often I would go there really just when it started, just when it opened up in the morning. And I always loved it. So 1978, Forbidden Planet, it was in Denmark Street. Denmark Street, number 23. That, of course, that street was packed solid with, of course, various music-related things. So it was a bit of a weird shop to suddenly be put in there, but I guess there's an overlap in the audience, I suppose, of people. So the customers would probably, you think, walking past thinking, I'm in science fiction, I'm into comics. So that's probably was a very good location. Also, of course, it was very close to Foyles and other bookshops as well. I don't know if Books, etc. was there back in 78. It's quite possible. Don't remember when that actually opened there, but it was still probably a very good book-related place to be. So with that, here is the actual one in 87. Unfortunately, I haven't got a picture of 78. Now, there are some pictures, I think one picture or two, of the opening of Forbidden Planet. And it's a really good picture because it shows you where all the things like the books were. Now, my memories of it, again, people will put comments saying, no, it was over on the other side, it was on the right, it was on the left. It's always the way. You can never tell from memory about it. I've been in hundreds of shops, comic shops and bookshops. So you would go into the entrance, obviously facing it, was on the right. You go in the entrance and then you would turn then left into the store. I don't know what was upstairs. There was an upstairs section. If that was a different company or whatever, I do not know. But you go in there and they had the front desk there. And I think initially, I don't remember putting my bags down, but later on, they always turned around and said, you had to leave your bags at the front desk, which I never liked. It's one of those things. Maybe they just didn't trust me. I guess that's always a possibility. But then all the science fiction books were in the front part of the store, which I guess is a sensible way of doing it. That's probably it was a split. So you had that, and you also had the media stuff and all those sort of things as well. There was also the comics at the back, obviously the new comics, etc. Now, I didn't buy many second-hand comics from there. I remember they did have second-hand comics there, but I always think that they were probably not the cheapest. Most shops are not. Whenever I go to a shop, I generally look at the things and I think it's more expensive than if you go along to a comic mart. But that's my perception of it. Well, here's the sort of books that I would have bought quite regularly in Forbidden Planet. Something like this one, Commune 2000 AD by Mac Reynolds. I actually love these books. They're just absolutely great. Likewise, something like this, Lost Oasis, Doc Savage. Real excellent book. And something like this, definitely Star Rider. Always thoroughly enjoyable, this one. This one is, of course, from Bantam Books. There were loads of great books there, but this is the sort of thing that I would have picked up when Forbidden Planet started. Brian Aldiss is another one, and of course, Door Books. I just love these ones. And of course, some of these books were not readily available in your average bookshops, but Forbidden Planet would stock many of these things, and this one is actually a thoroughly enjoyable story. City Machine. Now, also, of course, let's just go move those out of the way. There would have been magazines, and this one, of course, probably can't get it on the screen, is Media Scene. So you can see there, Media Scene, of course, Steranko one. This one's an all-art poster special one, and just brilliant. Now, whether I would have got this particular issue, I don't know, but certainly they had those sort of magazines. Things like these fanzines as well. Comics feature as well. Of course, JSA would have... I spent a bit of this afternoon trying to find an actual Forbidden Planet little price sticker. I haven't got any, so I thought, where would I find those? And also, of course, their Starlog number 4. They used to stock Starlog. I would have bought Starlog there. This one's back in about whatever it was a year, 77, 78. I think 77, so it probably might have not been exactly in Forbidden, but it's certainly very close to. And of course, I loved picking this up, the Will Eisner Spirits. So this one is, of course, a kitchen sink, and I regularly bought kitchen sink books. They were just absolutely great comics. And that's that. But what I also found, just looking through a load of things, is this. And I guess lots of people probably pick this one up. So let's just go through this. This one is the Forbidden Planet 1978 to 2018 40th Anniversary Souvenir Magazine. I'm really pleased I picked this up. I saw it in the shop. Oh, I have a copy of that. There's nothing better than having a free little book. It's free, please take a copy. And of course, this guy, obviously in the early comments, and it's also got a timeline. So you've got a timeline here, which is great, I think. So you've got here Denmark Street, July 1978. And then, of course, September, I should have actually gone through when I was going outside. I should have gone through these. And an animated commercial plays in West End cinema before screenings of Alien. And then you had Nick Rhodes, Duran Duran. Oh, wow. Peter Davison as well, of course, Doctor Who at the time. Forbidden Planet 2 opened November 1981. Then we got Star Wars cast signing. I don't know who actually turned out. Frank Miller. There you got Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, Will Eisner. I mean, wow, Will Eisner, that would have been brilliant. I wish I'd gone to that. Scotty as well. And also Ann Benson and Josh Whedon, 2001. And let's see, it doesn't actually mention other people, but there's actually some pictures. So as it says here, it all began as a passion, as the best things are. This one, of course, Tin Pan Alley, as I mentioned, Elton John, Sex Pistols. And also, one of my friends at my local choir that I go to, he was part of that scene of doing recordings. So he just, obviously Denmark Street is an extra special street for that as well. And you had all the various people, the stars, Neil Gaiman, Neil Adams. I knew Neil Adams, and that went there. Alan Moore, oh, well, Droulet, Nimoy, Adam West, of course, he opened the other one. And you've got some pictures here as well. And of course, you've got the original lovely posters there. I just think, and I remember that one as well. That one's a great one. Now that one, 1979, that was Bolland, that was a mail order catalogue. I used to get a lot of those. I got all the catalogues. I just loved the catalogues. Wish I'd kept them, but of course, as always, these sort of things over the years. But I love here, it's got some pictures. So you can see the comics. See, there's the comics behind there. So that would have been all the racks of the comics. And so you can see, of course, there you've got Spider-Mans, lots of Spider-Man. You've got Star Trek. Oh, I never bought that, I must admit, that one. And you had X-Men. I don't know what issue that was. Doesn't. Now, I can't work that out, which X-Men. Maybe they were the reprint ones. I don't know. No, must have been later than that. Strange. Maybe that was Amazing Adventures. Yes, I think that was the Amazing Adventures series. Can't make out the other ones. There's Journey into Mystery and a few other things there. However, obviously Neil Adams there. And Tanith Lee. I got one of the books, Tanith Lee. Just great, and I bought that in Forbidden Planet. I remember that one. And this, I love this one, of course, Stan Lee. You've got Stan Lee. And at the back, you can see the prices. These are obviously the ones of all the comics. And you've got A Strange Tales. I assume that looks like issue 110 or 115, probably around there. You've also got the Avengers there, and a few others as well. Oh, you've got an annual, got that one as well. I think that's the Strange Tales annual, I think. £35, and some other ones as well. Incredible Hulk, obviously original series as well. You can just about make them. Oh, Marvel Tales is the back there as well. And I did actually see another one time where I said Tales of Suspense behind him. So obviously there's a few photos there. And then you've got Frank Miller and Lynn Varley, and you've got a few other people as well. Obviously a long list of obviously greats. And some more. Of course, a Dalek or two, I'm certain, turned up as well. There you've got Terry Gilliam as well, and Jim Lee. And, there it is, George R.R. Martin, Songs of the Dying Earth. Now, that was quite a while back. Of course, Jonathan Ross there, and Brian Hitch. And there's so many. You can see a really lovely little booklet showing all the various people that turned up at these various things. Dan Abnett, which I think he's local in Maidstone. I might be wrong. But I think he is. So Dan Abnett, he's turned up, I think, a few times at various Maidstone comic marts. So there's been a few of those. And of course, it's gone through the years there. And you can see join our anniversary celebrations, and you can see the Forbidden Planet, obviously, T-shirt there. And you've got the various mugs and things, of course. Now, what they should have had in the celebration would have been the bag. They didn't have the bag. That would have been great, wouldn't it? Maybe they did. Maybe that's unfair to say they didn't have it, but maybe you got badge sets, you got the icon coasters, you've got the tote bags, you've got all those things, but not the original plastic bags. Wouldn't that have been wonderful? However, what you also got on the back for future signing events, visits, forbiddenplanet.com, visit our stores, and you've got obviously London Megastore, which is 179 Shaftesbury Avenue, Birmingham Megastore. Now, I don't know which ones are still going or not, and as I mentioned, I think there is a new one. The Reading one was mentioned online. I must go and check to see anything about that. I did not know that there was one there. I might be completely wrong on that, so don't hold me on that one. The Forbidden Planet varsity jacket. Don't think I love that they've gone for the 1978. That's pretty good, isn't it? And there it is. I think that is just absolutely. Again, they didn't show any picture of anyone holding up the bag. Wouldn't that be nice? I think probably you might find one on eBay. Probably massively expensive as well, I expect. I doubt if they're cheap somehow. And it's just, look at it says there, several thousand of other authors. I mean, they've had a lot. Arthur C. Clarke. I mean, wow. Michael Moorcock. I've seen Michael Moorcock in other various things. There's just so many great ones. Absolutely brilliant, brilliant writers and artists in that list. And there it is, a lovely little booklet. I don't know if you've got a copy of this. Certainly one that's worth picking up if you can find just a sort of, maybe someone, again, on eBay is selling one of these. Yeah, I guess so. Maybe, of course, we're coming up to the anniversary, of course, in 2028, which is 2 years away. Maybe they will be doing a 50th anniversary. Who will I have there for the 50th anniversary? Obviously it'd be good. That'd be great. I'm certain that Forbidden Planet will be still going into their 60th, 70th, 80th, etc. as well. Obviously, will be ever changing, I'm quite certain, the sort of material that's actually in the shop. However, apparently, Jonathan Ross put a comment somewhere and it said that he remembers going upstairs to another section. Now, I do not remember, I guess it was sort of like stuff that they couldn't fit downstairs, that there was some additional stock upstairs. If I did go up to that section, I probably only went once or twice at most. I do not remember going upstairs, so I can't work out in my memory where it would be. I assume it would be internal to the shop, so there would have been a staircase or something, or maybe it was the side bit where you come in initially and you go upstairs and maybe there was an entrance there. I do not recall. So there's that. I bought lots of comics there. It would be a regular Saturday trip. I'd meet up with my mate. We'd go, sort of generally stand outside. Obviously, I'd be waiting for him or vice versa. And we would then go in, have a look around. And, of course, generally always bought a load of science fiction books. I was really into science fiction at that time, 78, 79. 81, by the time 81, I was at university, so it was a regular trip. Every Saturday I would go down and meet up and go to the comic shop and probably Comic Mart as well, of course, if it was on. But before that, I would be travelling up from Maidstone to Victoria and then, of course, over to Forbidden Planet. Now, I don't remember when I stopped going to Dark They Were and then just started purely with Forbidden Planet. But I did. At some point, I just did not go back to Dark They Were, and then, of course, it closed. That was it. It was gone. So, with that, I think the store was superb. Very narrow. That was my memory of it. You go in and you sort of... It was not wide. It wasn't very wide. The staff were fairly pleasant. I always liked the staff. I can't say anything about that. But again, the thing was, of course, the bag always slightly miffed me off. I have to say that. That just always... But still, it's weird, isn't it? Something you hold for 40 years, you think, But no. Then they opened the second store, which was a surprise, I must admit. I thought, whoa, wow, Forbidden Planet opening a second store. And apparently, because of course, the people going, that's the thing that surprised me when I read online the comments. Lots of people put comments saying how packed it was in the original Forbidden Planet. I went there early in the morning. I never felt that it was very packed. It was, you go in there and it was not a struggle to get around that store. Do not remember having lots of people struggle through. Now, when they opened initially, of course, it was packed solid. And of course, when they had guests, they had like the Douglas Adams, probably other people as well. Stan Lee, I think, was there. Loads of those sort of people. Obviously, then it would be Christopher Lee. It was packed. Lots of people would turn up to those sort of things. So that was something. I must admit, I never stood in line for those ones. Quite often, if I ever went to them, we'd come back later. We'd be like the end of the thing, so we'd go in there and the person might be just sort of like finishing off sort of thing. He was like, there was not anyone really there. Everyone had obviously cleared off. So I remember a few times we'd go there and the author would be literally, my mate was chatting like with George R. R. Martin for ages, R.R. Martin, for ages. I think this was before Game of Thrones, of course, so obviously after that, then of course he became a mega celeb. But before that, but it was a nice, friendly shop, as far as I remember. I loved it. And then, of course, it changed because, of course, they moved, had the second one. I went in the second one a few times. It was never so much of interest, which is weird because I love TV and I love film. But I didn't really go to the store as much for that. I was always more the Forbidden Planet around the corner. And even when Forbidden Planet closed, and it did close, and I'm going to check the dates here because I've got the dates and I don't want to say the wrong date because someone will say, then we had 1988. Now, I don't know if it closed. It must still be 87 because this was from 87. But 88, they moved New Oxford Street. And then it became, I think, a little bit more disconnected. It became bigger. It was a bigger store and you had comics and then I vaguely remember a science fiction book downstairs. But I didn't go to it as often. I think I sort of disconnected from it. And actually I went to Comic Showcase more. And plus, I was working different places. So I wasn't always in London in the way that I was before. So if I went to it, if I did, like I say, meet up with mates, I would meet up outside the old Denmark Street Forbidden Planet. It was a thing for at least into the 2000s. I would meet there. So it was just a great memory of that store. Now, you can still see the store. I haven't got a photo of it, but you can still see the store. It looks very much like it did. It had that front bit with the sort of railings at the front. There was also downstairs. I don't know what was downstairs, if that was the storeroom, I guess, or where they did all the various posters and things. Because they always had, you can see here, lots of like posters and things. There'd be paste up people and things. Obviously, I'm certain there was obviously something downstairs. No idea what that was. But you still got the same structure looking now. But of course, Denmark Street has quite radically, every time I go back, it looks very different than how it was. Nowadays, I just go, obviously, to Foyles and those sort of places. However, I went around to New Oxford Street, and it was fine. And surprisingly, it was there for a long time. I really was quite shocked when researching this. And it said from 1988 to 2003. And I thought, wow. That is a long, long time. But again, like I say, I wasn't in London as much. But still, the store had all good stock of comics. But it had competition, like I say, Comic Showcase. Remember, Comic Showcase was far more, for me, far more important. Then, in 2003, they moved down to the new one. The one they've still got, the Shaftesbury Avenue. And I like the store. I really do. But by that time, I'd moved to another store that I liked more, and that was Gosh. In competition, I would say Gosh is probably my favourite, and Forbidden Planet is secondary. Because the thing is, with Forbidden Planet, it's no longer really a comic shop in the same way. It is a comic shop, of course, but it's got the comics are downstairs, and every time you go there, it feels like the comic section is a little bit smaller, I don't know. Oh, and it doesn't seem to have many people there. It always seems to be, you see the occasional person picking up comics, but not really in the same way. Maybe that's just the way people, of course, buy their comics now. Maybe it's obviously completely different. They've still got the science fiction books, still obviously a vast selection. They've still got the movie section. They've still got, of course, back in the 70s and the 80s, they wouldn't have had all the manga ones. The manga ones, if I ever bought manga, that would have been over the great place, the brilliant place in the Japan shop over near St Paul's, and that was absolutely brilliant. I do not remember much manga in Forbidden Planet until a lot later. Now it's possible they did, but I do not remember seeing the thick, massive volumes of manga books that you used to get, telephone sort of size books that they had. But Forbidden Planet is just great. When I first went to New York, the first thing I did, New York, after eating lots of too many sweets and other unhealthy food, I stayed in YMCA, 24, what's his name, Sevens, which is great. Just went to that and then spent all night watching Star Trek. But the next day I went to Forbidden Planet and I was actually quite surprised. Now I don't know the connection between Forbidden Planet and the one in New York and London. I don't. That's all online, you can find that out. But I was quite surprised. I thought it wasn't as good as our one, which I really was quite surprised. I really was, you know, when you go, you've got visions in your mind that New York will be like full of comic shops. Every street would have a comic shop. It didn't. It might have now, I don't know, but I doubt it. But it had a decent selection. It had the biggest fan I've ever seen, and as it was about 150, it felt like super hot, sunny day. I went on the hottest day I think could ever imagine. It was great just standing in front of that fan. But that was my main memory of Forbidden Planet. Now, of course, they've got Forbidden Planets in many other places. You know what? I've never visited any of them. That's terrible to admit, I have to say. I've visited millions of other comic shops, but I've never been to Bristol. I think there's one in Bristol. I think there's like Leeds. There's a number of places. Apparently, and I saw online, I was really quite surprised because I used to live in Reading. Reading has got a Forbidden Planet. So next time I'm in Reading, I will have to pop along to that. I hope it's still there. That'd be great to go visit that one. So that is my very, memories. And there's some person put a comment saying about the video that you didn't seem to remember much about Dark They Were. And yes, that's true. But the purpose of this video is a connection, because hopefully if you get a number of people chatting about it, people will turn around and say, I went there, I worked there, I did this, I remember that was that upstairs bit, yes, that was there. That's so the comments, when you put comments, people put comments, it's just great to hear all sort of the happy memories. Who did you go and see? Did you see Stan Lee? I mean, that must have been amazing to go and see Stan Lee. And obviously other comic book artists. I don't know if they had Neil Adams. I think they had Neil Adams. Certainly they must have had a lot of comic artists. And those sort of things are just great. Just happy memories. And, you know, what things did you buy? Did you enjoy the other shops? Do you enjoy going to Forbidden Planet now? All these sort of things, just fascinating to hear. And also, after that, maybe it's also nice to hear about other comic shops, of course. I mean, obviously, Comic Showcase, which I will probably cover in another video. And of course, other sort of related shops. I mean, everyone's got their happy memories of good old second-hand stores, the half-price stores, those sort of things. And of course, most of my memories of those I'm always quite certain they probably didn't really exist, but they're just happy memories, probably dreams more than anything else. Still, it'd be nice to hear about Forbidden Planet. All your thoughts about good old Forbidden Planet.